How's it going, Welcome back to Great Green North. Welcome to part 3 of how to install your own DIY in-ground irrigation system. Now without further ado, let's get into the video. For those of you who are new here, I know a lot of you are not subscribed. My name is Wade Murray. I worked in the lawn industry for over 3 years, and I'm here to give you real live, and I'm also a lawn enthusiast, and I'm here to give you real-time lawn tips to help make your lawn become the best on the block. So those of you who are interested in that, click the subscribe button and also click that bell icon so you never miss a video every time I upload. Okay, so last episode we talked about putting in those lines. In day 1 and day 2, we got 2 zones done. We talked about the trenching of the lines, how we got the lines trenched. We talked a little bit about how to make those fittings, how to make those connections in between each head. And then we got the heads running without any pressure. So now without further ado, let's get into what I did after we got the heads running. Okay, so as I talked about last time, we had those pressure problems with the heads, so we went ahead and put the 1.5 nozzles on. Now what that nozzle means is that head is outputting 1.5 gallons per minute of water. So once we put those heads on, that was our output. We make sure we are getting our correct distance. Now it's time to start backfilling in and reburying the heads. So without further ado, check out these clips from the morning of day 3 where I backfilled the heads from the line that we finished in day 2.
Good morning, folks. Welcome to day 3 of the irrigation install. So yesterday we finished zone number 2, which was the one up along the property line over there. We've already done zone number 1, which is up over there. So today I'm going to be showing you how to level and bury the heads for zone number 2, and then we're going to be starting on zone number 1. Then we're going to be starting on zone number 2, and then ending the day on zone number 4. So without further ado, let's get to the heads here. Okay, so once again, I'm getting hit with the voiceover here. I think it will be clear for you guys to understand. So first of all, clearing back away from the line on either side. Our lines aren't, we didn't put them in as deep as the depth of the head. So if you did put your lines in as deep as the depth of the head, you won't have to do this. But for us, we just put our lines in at the highest that we could. So just 4 inches to the top of the line, to the top of grade. So for each head, we had to clear back from the head on either side, as you can see me doing here. I'm clearing back from the head so that pipe will slope in, and then that coupling around the top, the thing with the lines, you want that to be flush with the ground so that when that head pops up, it will pop up and you won't be hitting it or tripping over it or anything. So as you can see, I'm clearing the soil around here as I'm slowly lowering the head to make sure that head is level with the ground, level at the level that I want it to. I'm kind of running along the ground to see if I'm happy with it. As you can see, because we sloped, I had to clear back a good distance away from the heads on either side to make sure that we can get that line to slope in down to the middle. Some of the lines I had to go back over a couple times and clear them out to make sure I can get that head as level as possible, but it's worth putting in the time and effort now. You really want that head to be level with the ground so you're not tripping over it, and you don't want that head to be too low. Pretty much that retainer ring around the top, that's what you want flush with the ground. So the pop-up actually sticks a little bit above the retainer ring, especially because I have a check valve on mine. So that check valve keeps that pop-up up a little bit higher. That's fine to be sticking above the ground, but you really want this as flush to the ground as possible. It's going to actually extend the lifespan of the head if the head's not being constantly run over, tripped on, or kicked on, or bent because it's too high above the ground. So as you can see, as soon as I got it level, I put my full body weight on it and pushed it down as I filled the soil back in, and then I had to compact the soil with my fists to make sure that head is not going to spring right back up like I want it to. And while I'm doing this, I'm trying to keep the head as level as possible, up and down and left to right. So what I do here is I fill back around the head, still leaving the head a little bit of wiggle room is really what I'm trying to do. And then later I will come turn the heads on. I'll make sure they're as level as possible before I fully fill this whole area back in and get it ready for grass seed. So as you can see, you do need quite a bit of dirt around the head to keep it from lifting up. I think this one ended up lifting up a little bit as I was backfilling, but all in all, refilling around that head, now you can see it's nice and compacted. The head's not moving very much anymore. As that soil around is settled, the heads will move, they will sink and rise because of the freeze and thaw. But as you can see, trying to keep the head as level as I can, up and down and left to right, to make sure that when it's throwing a full circle, it's not throwing too far in one direction and not far enough in the other direction. So once you've done that, we take this big hunk of grass here, I take a shovel and I cut that hunk of grass in half. I'll replace it around the head. And see here, I cut that hunk of grass in half, slowly kind of moved it out of the way of the head, just compacting it down. This is basically replacing the grass. The grass is very thin in this area. At the time of recording, it was early spring. So the grass is definitely more thick in this area. As you can see, when you're compacting, that head's actually moving. That means that the ground is not compacted enough around the head. So I'm going to add some dirt after the fact. So as you can see, did my best to level it out there. That's the head down there. We're covered in dirt. What we're going to do now, turn it on, let it pop up, make sure it's still level, and we should be good. So as you can see here after the fact, the head is popped up and it is spinning. It looks quite level to me, is what I'm saying in the video clip here. Just the sound quality wasn't great, but in the end it was leaning a little bit to the right as I looked as it went around. So what you need to do when it's doing that is you grab the sprinkler head by the retainer ring and you pull it over a little bit and then compact it on the one side. So ideally you want to do this when the head's popped, like not popped up. You don't want to grab the part that's popped up or you might risk ripping that off the head. So that's that head. I'm going to fill a little bit more dirt around that because I don't want that to sink and get hit by the mower. Well, let's move on to the next one. So as you can see from here, folks, it's basically rinse and repeat from that head to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. And this one, it was just easier and easier as you continue to do it. Starting with this head on top here, this arrow that always points towards the tip is where the water is coming out. That's also known as your left stop. So that is going to be where the sprinkler is going to stop. So I want to make sure to set my left stop where I want that sprinkler to end, and then everywhere it's going to go from there, it's going to turn right. This front is your retaining screw. That's also going to help to interrupt the stream of water a little bit. Which we're going to try to do here so we get a more even stream. So now it's going to reverse until it hits its left stop. And it's going to come back towards me. So once you set your left stop, that's a fixed edge. So the sprinkler is never going to rotate anywhere left past that fixed edge. The sprinkler will hit that fixed edge and rotate right past that. So as you can see here, I'm letting it rotate right as far as possible. But as you're going to see coming up here, that's where I want my right stop to be. Now these sprinklers come out of the box doing 180 degrees of rotation, but they can do from 40 degrees of rotation all the way up to 360 degrees of rotation. So what you're going to see me adjust soon is the arc adjustment screw, which is in the back of the sprinkler head on the opposite side that the stream comes out. This screw adjusts positively or negatively how much of a circle that sprinkler does. So as I said, it adjusts anywhere from 40 degrees to 360 degrees around. Now as you can see, we have our left stop set like so. It's going to come all the way around this way to our right stop, which is set like so. So that one's good, set, can do it. A couple of other things, key things here, as you adjust these gear driven sprinklers, you can manipulate them and rotate them yourself. However, you don't ever want to rotate against the sprinkler head. So if the sprinkler head is turning right, you have to rotate the head all the way right before you rotate it back left. So you can rotate and manipulate the head itself, but if the head is turning right, you don't ever want to turn it left until you've gone all the way to that right or left stop and rotated it backwards. Now that whole zone is set. All three of those sprinklers running are all good. That's how you set the sprinkler zone. Now it's time to begin with the next zone.
Okay, so a couple of key things there. Number one, there's this thing called the retainer ring on a lot of irrigation heads. That ring you want to make sure, as I said, is level with the ground. I did have a couple heads that were a little too high, so I had to go back down and drop the heads down. That's very important because as your head is too high, you're going to continue hitting it with your lawnmower. You're going to tip that head and make sure that it's not level anymore. And it's also going to shorten the lifespan of your heads. And those heads are expensive, so you don't really want to shorten the lifespan of the heads. Secondly, making sure that your head is too high, it's also a tripping hazard, so it's just better to make sure that head is nice and level with the ground. Nobody will see it as it's running, and that's the best way. The next important thing, as I said, is to make sure that those heads are level. So as I showed you, me leveling the heads, making sure that when that pop-up comes up, it's coming straight up. Because if the pop-up is leaning to a side, you're not going to get your full radius of distance. As the water throws here, it's thrown towards the ground. And then over here, your water is going to be throwing way up into the air, and you're going to be getting more radius. So you want to make sure that head is perfectly level. So as it spins around, it's equally covering all the way around the head. Finally, after I leveled all the heads, I just ran them for a couple of minutes just to make sure that there's not problems blowing out any air that's left in the line and making sure those heads are good. Secondly, after we finished the install of the irrigation system, I got out the lawnmower, I drove over all the lines, and I compacted all the ground around the heads, making sure that those heads aren't going to move for years to come. So now let's get into day 3. We had 2 zones left to do this day, once again fighting the rain, as there was a 3-day rain event coming starting tomorrow. So we had 2 zones left to do today, as well as clean up and finishing of all the connections and the timers from the previous day. So the morning started with me out there making sure that I leveled all the heads from the previous day and starting the trenching for the longest line. For one of the longest lines. This line goes straight up the middle of the backyard. As you can see here, there was no small feat to open up the trenches of that line. So as we began to open up trenches in this line, we had finished trenching the entire line when we had an idea. We had about 250 feet of extra pipe because you can only order poly pipe in either 100 or 400 feet rolls. We need about 600, so we ended up getting 2 400-foot rolls. And at the very back of our backyard, it's very hard to get a hose up there without losing pressure, number one, and without having 2 people to control the hose because it's just that much hose. It's very difficult to pull it across the yard. So what we decided to do was we would run an auxiliary line from our main hose tap all the way underground beside this zone, all the way up to the top of the hill. And later, I will add on to this series where we're going to put a post and a sprocket up there, so then we have access to water at the top of the hill as well. Now this line is not very, very deep, so this line will also have to be blown out in the winter time, just like the rest of the irrigation lines. But we decided to do this as well because we were already digging and because we already had majority of the trench open. It just made sense to keep going. Now, however, because we wanted to do this, we had to make sure that we could maintain our 4 inches below depth. So we had to dig the trench even deeper. Even though we tried to put the pipes side by side. There are some points in the trench where these pipes are basically on top of each other. So we wanted to make sure that even when those aeration spikes shoot down into the trench, they're not hitting that pipe on top. So most areas in these trenches, these pipes are side by side, but in some small, tighter areas, they're on top of each other. So we quickly and easily got that line in as well as the other line. So this added about an hour worth of retrenching and reconnecting the pipe. Now, luckily we didn't have a lot of connections because we just didn't connect this pipe at all. It's basically just sitting in the ground. We're in lockdown here where I'm located in Canada, so it's hard to get stuff to finish reconnecting the pipes at quick notice. And we're supposed to be staying home and we're staying safe. So that is why that line will not be connected, and it probably won't be connected till June. But we got the other line in. It was a little bit more tricky because these 2 lines were beside each other, and especially while leveling the heads, the 2 lines beside each other made everything a little bit more tricky. The nice thing about having this line beside the other line is it's easy to locate for farther maintenance. You know those lines are right beside each other, and that's how they're going to be controlled. Once all the pipe was run for that zone, we were running out of daylight and the rain was coming, so it was time to start on the last zone. This zone we trenched out kind of in a T pattern. This zone actually has 2 T's in it, which made it kind of an odd zone because it had a lot of connections. Most of our zones didn't have any connections other than the connections at the head. So we quickly trenched out this zone. This zone was the shortest zone, about 60 feet. And once we trenched out that zone, it was a matter of just starting the connections. I went from head to head to head to head, putting in all the connections, blowing out all the lines, and running testing the system to make sure there was no leaks. Doing all the crimps, blowing out all the lines. That was that. Finally, it was just going back and leveling all the heads. Every head had to be leveled that we had put in. We put in about 6 heads that day, so they all had to go back and be leveled at the same time. And then we got to kick on the system for the first time ever to see every zone run independently. So without further ado, check out this clip of us kicking on the system and running every zone independently. So that's awesome. That was the best moment that we had. Every zone was running and working perfectly. Now, not gonna lie to you guys, everything hasn't been working perfectly since then, and there are some improvements coming to the system, some changes that I decided to make a couple weeks in after we had a few problems. So stay tuned for part 4 of the irrigation install system coming out in a couple weeks from now once I get those parts. And in part 4 too, I'm going to tell you my final impressions of an irrigation system. So that's it, guys. It's that easy. Leveling and burying the heads is probably one of the most important parts, and that's why I decided to make a video on this today, just to talk about this. Because for those of you who are also have an in-ground irrigation system that maybe was installed professionally, you can have sunken or leaching heads or heads that aren't level just from age, the sinking of the ground over the winter, all that different stuff. Maybe you ran it over with a lawnmower, you had some work done in your house and they ran over a head with a large machine. Either of these things are very probable cases of why you'd have problems and need to level your head in the future. So this is why I wanted to make this video, just to make that helpful and accessible for you. For those of you who are installing an in-ground irrigation system and haven't seen the first 2 parts of this video, I would definitely suggest watching the first 2 parts of these series. They have the most information about part 1, what is an irrigation system, how does it work, and part 2, we talk about trenching and getting all the lines in, and now in this part we're talking about putting in the heads. Next part, I will talk about any issues that I quickly solved from the irrigation system I designed, as well as my final impressions of the system. So without further ado, thank you guys for watching this episode of The Great Green North. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And from The Great Green North, my name is Wade North.